Well, Vincent, in terms of UK oil majors, we're a lot more used recently to hearing about BP and what it's doing than we are about Shell. But Shell has had some news today. Tell us about it.
Exactly. Well, it was announced first quarter results this morning, but also it announced that this chief executive, Mr Voser, will be retiring in the first half of next year. That was a bit of a surprise. I mean, I think nobody was really expecting that in the investor community. And he was, quite highly regarded, and I think people were very comfortable with him, and it adds a degree of uncertainty to Shell that wasn't there yesterday.
Indeed. Had he been in the job for long? Has he done a good job?
Well, he's been there for 4 years already. I mean, by the time he leaves, he'll have been there for 5. And that is essentially the average for Shell CEOs over the last sort of 30 years or so. It's been a sort of 5-year stint on the whole. And he was Chief Financial Officer before becoming CEO, so he's been essentially in the top 2 posts at Shell for 10 years. Has he done a good job? I think he has certainly steadied the ship a lot, and Shell is a much more stable company and more predictable company now than it was, say, 10 years ago, that's for sure.
But how does that kind of stint compare with how long chief executives tend to last at other oil majors?
Well, certainly they last a lot longer at American oil companies, but I think that's peculiarly due to the fact that American oil men tend to identify with their companies, I suspect, a lot more than in Europe. I mean, Exxon, for example, has had only 3 CEOs since 1987. So that's almost as long as Shell has had 6.
That's a much faster turnover at Shell. They'll be on the hunt for a replacement now. What will be on the agenda for the new man at the top?
Well, I think obviously he will have to maintain assuming it's a man, he'll have to maintain the stability that's there now at Shell that investors like after the reserves crisis of 10 years ago when they overstated their reserves by 20% or thereabouts. So he'll have to preserve that, keep investing in the big projects that Shell has been doing for the last decade or so, particularly in gas. I mean, it's a huge gas company now. But I think as well that the board ought to be looking for somebody with a kind of longer term vision of Shell rather than simply 4 or 5 years, which, if they could hire somebody who has a 10-year view of Shell, I think that would be very interesting.
Well, it sounds as if life at Shell might finally start to get a little bit more interesting. Vincent, thank you very much.